Your soulmate just realized they were never meant to lose you. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Imagine a story about two hearts that crossed paths at exactly the wrong time but left each other with exactly the right lessons. One believed that walking away would make life easier. The other quietly continued growing, never fully understanding why certain chapters had to end before they were ready. Time passed. Seasons changed. The world continued moving as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet somewhere beneath the routines of ordinary life, one person slowly began discovering a truth they had spent far too long avoiding. They realized that some people are not easily forgotten, not because they are perfect, but because they awakened something genuine that refuses to disappear. This is the story of the moment they finally understood that losing someone truly authentic was never the future they wanted to create. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. At first, they convinced themselves everything would become easier with enough time. They believed distance would quiet their thoughts. They imagined that focusing on work, responsibilities, and daily routines would slowly erase the emotions they had tried so hard to hide. Every new day became another attempt to prove that moving forward was simple. Every conversation became another distraction. Every achievement became another reason to avoid looking back. Yet no matter how much life changed around them, one thing remained remarkably consistent. Whenever they experienced moments of genuine peace, your memory quietly returned, not demanding attention, but simply existing with quiet persistence. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. They remembered ordinary moments more than dramatic ones. They remembered conversations where they felt understood without needing to explain every emotion. They remembered your patience during difficult days. They remembered your ability to remain kind even when life tested your strength. They remembered laughing together over small things that seemed insignificant at the time but later became some of their most treasured memories. Those moments remained because authentic connection is rarely built through grand gestures. It is built through countless small acts of trust, respect, and consistency. One evening, after another long day, they sat alone without the usual distractions. The television remained silent. Their phone rested untouched beside them. The room felt unusually calm. In that quietness, thoughts they had avoided for months slowly surfaced. They asked themselves a difficult question. Why does this person continue appearing in my thoughts even after everything that has changed? They searched for logical explanations but found something much simpler. Some people leave lasting impressions because they make us feel more like ourselves than anyone else ever has. Around you, they never felt the need to pretend. Around you, they experienced a version of themselves they genuinely liked. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Human beings often recognize value only after absence creates perspective. Familiarity sometimes hides extraordinary qualities. When someone consistently offers kindness, emotional safety, and encouragement, it can become easy to assume those gifts will always remain available. Only later, when life becomes quieter, do people begin noticing the spaces those qualities once filled. They realize that your presence had brought stability into their emotional world in ways they had never appreciated while it was happening. As weeks turned into months, they found themselves comparing every new connection to the quiet authenticity they once experienced with you. It wasn't about perfection. They knew no relationship is perfect. It was about something much deeper. They missed conversations where honesty came naturally. They missed feeling accepted without needing to perform. They missed the emotional peace that cannot be manufactured through appearances alone. They began understanding that genuine compatibility often feels calm rather than chaotic. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Looking back, they recognized how much fear had influenced previous decisions. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of making the wrong choice. Fear of opening their heart completely. Instead of expressing uncertainty honestly, they sometimes withdrew. Instead of asking difficult questions, they remained silent. Instead of trusting what they genuinely felt, they allowed hesitation to become their guide. Now, with greater maturity, they realized silence had never protected them. It had only delayed understanding. They also began noticing how much you had grown. Whether through mutual friends, distant updates, or simply remembering who you had always been, they admired your resilience. They imagined you continuing to build your dreams despite disappointments. They pictured you choosing kindness even when life became complicated. That image filled them with both admiration and humility. They realized that while they had spent so much time looking backward, you had continued becoming stronger. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. One afternoon they wrote a list of the qualities they hoped to find in any meaningful relationship. Without intending to, every line reminded them of you. Honesty. Patience. Compassion. Emotional maturity. Respect. Quiet confidence. A willingness to communicate instead of manipulate. They stared at the list for a long time before smiling softly. It was then they understood something that changed everything. They had not simply lost a relationship. They had walked away from someone whose character had quietly become the standard by which they measured every future connection. That realization was not comfortable. It brought regret, but it also brought clarity. They no longer blamed circumstances or timing. They accepted responsibility for the choices they had made when fear seemed louder than trust. They understood that growth begins the moment people stop searching for excuses and begin learning from their own decisions. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. As this understanding settled into their heart, another realization followed. Losing someone authentic does not always happen in one dramatic moment. Sometimes it happens slowly through postponed conversations, unanswered questions, and opportunities left untouched because uncertainty feels safer than vulnerability. Looking back, they saw those moments clearly. They wished they had spoken more honestly. They wished they had expressed appreciation more often. They wished they had recognized your value before distance created perspective. Yet this story is not about remaining trapped inside regret. It is about transformation. Every difficult lesson encouraged them to become more emotionally honest. They became quicker to express gratitude. They learned to apologize sincerely. They stopped assuming meaningful people would always remain nearby without hearing how much they mattered. They understood that genuine appreciation should never depend upon perfect timing. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Perhaps the greatest discovery they made was beautifully simple. Love is not only about powerful emotions. It is about choosing honesty when honesty feels difficult. It is about protecting trust through consistent actions. It is about appreciating quiet kindness before life teaches its value through absence. It is about recognizing that authentic people become unforgettable because they help us become better versions of ourselves. As this first chapter closes, they stand at the beginning of a new understanding. They no longer see the past as something to escape. They see it as the teacher that revealed what truly matters. They have realized that meaningful connections deserve courage instead of hesitation, gratitude instead of assumption, and honest communication instead of prolonged silence. Above all, they have finally accepted one life-changing truth. They were never truly meant to lose someone whose authenticity, compassion, and quiet strength had forever changed the way they understood love, respect, and the kind of future they hoped to build. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. The realization did not arrive all at once. It wasn't a dramatic moment with music playing in the background or a single event that suddenly changed everything. Instead, it came quietly, almost unnoticed at first. It appeared in ordinary mornings when they reached for their phone and instinctively thought about sharing something with you before remembering that life had changed. It appeared during long drives when a familiar song brought back memories they thought had already faded. It appeared while watching strangers laugh together, reminding them of the effortless conversations they once shared with you. Little by little, those moments formed a picture they could no longer ignore. They finally understood that some people become part of your heart in ways that time alone cannot erase. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. They had spent so much energy convincing themselves that moving on meant forgetting. They believed healing required pretending certain chapters had never mattered. They filled their calendar with responsibilities. They accepted invitations they would normally decline. They worked longer hours. They distracted themselves with new goals and unfamiliar places. Yet every attempt to escape their emotions eventually led them back to the same quiet truth. Genuine connection leaves lasting fingerprints on the soul. It changes the way a person sees the world. It changes what they value. It changes what they hope to find in every future relationship. One evening, after returning home from an exhausting day, they sat in complete silence. There were no notifications demanding attention. No conversations to interrupt their thoughts. For the first time in a long while, they allowed themselves to stop running. They looked around the room and realized something unexpected. They had changed almost everything about their surroundings. Different furniture. Different routines. Different priorities. Yet despite all those changes, the lessons you left behind remained exactly the same. Kindness still mattered. Patience still mattered. Honest communication still mattered. Your influence had quietly become part of the person they were becoming. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. They remembered one conversation that had seemed ordinary at the time. You had spoken about how trust is built through consistency rather than promises. Back then they listened without fully understanding. Now those words echoed through their heart with remarkable clarity. They realized how often they had mistaken temporary excitement for lasting connection. They had chased certainty while overlooking sincerity. They had searched for perfection while standing beside someone whose authenticity was already enough. As these realizations continued unfolding, they stopped blaming circumstances for everything that had happened. They stopped telling themselves that timing alone was responsible. Instead, they accepted something much more difficult. Fear had played a larger role than they had ever admitted. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of allowing someone to see every part of who they truly were. Looking back, they understood that fear had not protected them. It had only delayed growth. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. During this season of reflection, they began noticing how differently they approached the people around them. They listened more carefully. They became slower to judge. They learned to appreciate ordinary conversations instead of waiting for extraordinary moments. They expressed gratitude more often because they understood how quickly opportunities can disappear. Every lesson they learned seemed connected to the quiet example you had already set without ever asking for recognition. One afternoon they came across an old notebook filled with goals they had written years earlier. As they read through its pages, they noticed something surprising. Many of the dreams they had written were about success, achievement, and recognition. Yet nowhere had they written about becoming a kinder person, a more patient listener, or someone capable of creating emotional safety for others. Those priorities had changed because of life, because of experience, and because of meeting someone who naturally lived those values every day. That realization humbled them. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. They also realized that losing someone meaningful does not happen only when people stop speaking. Sometimes it begins much earlier. It begins when important conversations are postponed. It begins when appreciation remains unspoken. It begins when fear becomes more influential than honesty. Looking back, they recognized countless small moments where a different choice might have changed everything. They no longer viewed those memories with anger. Instead, they treated them as teachers guiding them toward greater emotional maturity. There were still nights when memories appeared unexpectedly. A familiar street. A favorite restaurant. A simple phrase someone else spoke. None of these moments caused overwhelming sadness anymore. Instead, they inspired gratitude. Gratitude that they had experienced genuine kindness. Gratitude that they had learned what emotional peace felt like. Gratitude that someone had quietly shown them a healthier way to love without ever demanding they become someone different. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. As the months continued passing, they stopped asking whether they deserved another chance. They began asking a more meaningful question. Am I becoming the kind of person who would protect a meaningful connection if life ever gave me another opportunity? That question transformed everything. Instead of focusing on what they had lost, they focused on who they were becoming. They developed healthier communication habits. They became more emotionally available. They practiced honesty even in uncomfortable situations. They understood that lasting relationships are built through everyday integrity rather than occasional grand gestures. One quiet weekend they took a walk through a familiar park. Families laughed together. Children played without worrying about tomorrow. Couples sat peacefully beneath old trees enjoying ordinary conversations. Watching those simple moments reminded them that happiness rarely arrives through dramatic events. More often it grows through consistent acts of care, mutual respect, and shared understanding. Suddenly they remembered how natural those things had always felt with you. There had never been a need to impress one another. There had only been room to be real. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. That realization became impossible to ignore. They finally accepted that they had never truly been searching for perfection. They had been searching for peace. The tragedy was that peace had already entered their life once, and fear had convinced them to question it. Now they understood the difference between excitement that fades and trust that deepens over time. They recognized that emotional safety is one of the greatest gifts two people can offer each other. They also understood that meaningful people never truly disappear from our lives. Even if paths separate, the lessons remain. The kindness remains. The standards they inspire remain. Every future relationship becomes influenced by the people who taught us what genuine respect feels like. Your example had become exactly that. A quiet standard reminding them never to settle for relationships built on confusion when they had once experienced the beauty of clarity. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. They no longer wished to rewrite the past because they finally understood its purpose. Every mistake had revealed an opportunity to grow. Every disappointment had encouraged greater wisdom. Every unanswered question had led them toward deeper honesty with themselves. The person standing here today was no longer the person who had allowed fear to make important decisions. They had become someone willing to choose openness, accountability, and sincerity instead. As this chapter comes to its close, one truth shines brighter than every regret that came before it. Losing someone authentic taught them that genuine connection should never be taken for granted. Quiet kindness deserves recognition. Honest hearts deserve honesty in return. Emotional safety deserves protection. And above all, they finally realized that they were never meant to lose someone who had quietly transformed the way they understood love, trust, compassion, and the kind of future they truly wanted to build. Every step they now take is guided by that realization, carrying with it the hope that if life ever offers another meaningful connection, they will meet it not with fear, but with courage, gratitude, and a heart finally ready to cherish what truly matters. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. The more time passed, the more one truth became impossible for them to deny. They had spent so much energy trying to convince themselves that moving forward meant forgetting, yet every step they took only revealed how deeply certain people shape the way we understand life. Some individuals become memories. Others become lessons. But every once in a while, someone becomes part of the person we are destined to become. That was the realization quietly unfolding inside their heart. They no longer remembered you only through old conversations or shared moments. They carried your influence into the way they treated strangers, the way they handled disappointment, and the way they dreamed about their future. They finally understood that losing you had never truly happened in a single moment. It happened through countless small choices driven by fear instead of honesty, hesitation instead of trust, and silence instead of communication. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. One morning they stood in front of a mirror longer than usual. They weren't looking at their appearance. They were looking at the person they had become. They remembered who they used to be. Someone who often avoided difficult conversations because they feared conflict, someone who assumed important people would always remain nearby without needing to hear how much they were appreciated, someone who believed that love should somehow survive without consistent effort. Looking back, they could see how much those beliefs had changed. Life had humbled them. Experience had softened them. Reflection had transformed them. They no longer wanted relationships built on assumptions. They wanted relationships built on honesty, mutual respect, and the courage to communicate before misunderstandings became permanent. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. During those weeks of reflection, they often found themselves smiling unexpectedly at memories that once made them emotional. They remembered the way you laughed without trying to impress anyone. They remembered your habit of encouraging people when nobody else noticed they were struggling. They remembered how naturally you listened, giving someone your complete attention instead of waiting for your turn to speak. Those qualities had seemed ordinary at the time because they were simply part of who you were. Now they understood that those quiet qualities were extraordinary. The loudest people are not always the ones who change our lives. Often it is the calmest, kindest, and most genuine people who leave the deepest mark. One afternoon they met an old friend who asked a simple question: "What have you learned over the last few years?" They expected themselves to answer with career achievements or personal goals. Instead, the first words that came to mind surprised them. They said, "I've learned that the right people should never have to guess how much they matter." The moment those words left their mouth, they realized they were speaking from experience rather than theory. They knew exactly what silence could cost. They knew how painful it felt to realize appreciation had remained hidden inside the heart until distance made it impossible to ignore. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. They also discovered something unexpected about forgiveness. For a long time they believed forgiveness meant pretending mistakes never happened. Now they understood something different. Forgiveness means accepting the past without allowing it to define the future. It means learning from painful experiences instead of living inside them forever. It means carrying wisdom instead of resentment. That understanding changed the way they viewed every chapter of their life. They no longer wished to erase difficult memories because those memories had become the foundation of their emotional maturity. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. There were evenings when they still wondered what life might have looked like if fear had not been part of the story. They imagined conversations that could have happened. They imagined moments where honesty might have changed everything. Yet instead of becoming trapped inside those possibilities, they gently returned to the present. They reminded themselves that growth always begins where we are, not where we wish we had been. Every lesson they carried now had the power to shape tomorrow in healthier ways. As time continued moving forward, they noticed another transformation. They became more intentional about every relationship in their life. They called family members more often. They thanked friends instead of assuming gratitude was understood. They apologized quickly when necessary. They became fully present during conversations rather than allowing distractions to steal meaningful moments. Every one of those changes came from realizing how easily important opportunities can pass when people believe there will always be more time. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. One rainy evening they opened a box filled with old keepsakes they had not touched in years. Tickets from concerts. Small souvenirs from trips. Handwritten notes from different seasons of life. None of those items held extraordinary financial value, yet each one represented a chapter they had lived. As they carefully placed everything back into the box, they smiled. They realized that the most valuable memories were never connected to expensive gifts or dramatic events. They were connected to how someone made them feel. Safe. Understood. Accepted. Encouraged. Those emotions remain long after physical objects lose their importance. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. That realization became another turning point. They finally accepted that they had been searching for peace all along, not perfection. Peace cannot be purchased. It cannot be forced. It grows naturally wherever honesty, kindness, and trust exist together. Looking back, they recognized those qualities in you more clearly than ever before. They admired the way you remained true to your values even during difficult seasons. They admired your resilience when life became uncertain. They admired your willingness to continue believing in goodness despite disappointment. They no longer viewed those memories with sadness alone. Instead, they felt inspired. They wanted to become the kind of person who created that same emotional safety for others. They wanted people in their life to feel heard, appreciated, and respected. They understood that love is not simply something we receive. It is something we practice through everyday choices, thoughtful words, patient listening, and consistent actions. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. They also realized that meaningful relationships are never maintained through luck alone. They require attention. They require vulnerability. They require two people choosing each other repeatedly, especially during ordinary days when nothing dramatic is happening. They promised themselves that if life ever placed another meaningful connection in front of them, they would never again assume appreciation could remain unspoken. They would protect trust with honesty. They would protect peace with communication. They would protect love with consistent effort. As another season arrived, they noticed something beautiful. The regret they once carried had slowly transformed into gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons. Gratitude for the growth. Gratitude for the people who had shaped their heart. Gratitude that they now understood what truly matters. They had stopped measuring relationships by excitement alone. They measured them by integrity, emotional safety, mutual respect, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing two people can be completely themselves without fear of judgment. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Think about your own journey for a moment. Every difficult season has taught you something. Every unexpected ending has revealed hidden strength. Every meaningful connection has left part of its wisdom inside your heart. That is how people grow. Not by avoiding mistakes, but by allowing those mistakes to become teachers instead of permanent burdens. Growth is rarely loud. Most of the time it happens quietly, one honest realization at a time. And perhaps that is the greatest truth hidden inside this story. They finally realized they were never meant to lose someone whose kindness had taught them compassion, whose honesty had taught them courage, whose patience had taught them understanding, and whose quiet strength had completely transformed their definition of love. Whether the future brings reunion or simply lasting gratitude, one thing can never be taken away. Genuine people change us forever. Their influence remains in every wiser decision we make, every kinder word we choose, and every relationship we build with a heart that has finally learned the priceless value of authenticity, respect, and unconditional human kindness. Don't scroll, listen to this because your heart needs this right now. Every meaningful journey eventually reaches a place where regret is no longer the loudest voice. There comes a moment when understanding becomes stronger than fear, when gratitude becomes greater than sorrow, and when the heart finally accepts the lessons that life has been patiently teaching all along. That is where this story arrives now. After months of reflection, countless quiet evenings, and more honest conversations with themselves than they ever imagined possible, they finally understood something that changed the way they viewed love forever. They were never truly meant to lose someone whose presence had inspired them to become a kinder, wiser, and more authentic version of themselves. Losing you had never been part of the future they truly wanted. It had only become part of the lesson they needed in order to understand your value completely. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. For a long time they believed life was about finding certainty before taking meaningful risks. They waited for perfect timing. They waited for every doubt to disappear. They waited for confidence to arrive before choosing vulnerability. Looking back, they smiled gently at that younger version of themselves because they now understood something completely different. Life rarely rewards those who wait for perfect certainty. Instead, it quietly rewards those who choose honesty despite uncertainty. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is speaking sincerely while fear still exists. Courage is appreciating someone while they are still part of your journey instead of waiting until distance teaches their importance. One early morning they found themselves watching the sunrise from a quiet hillside. The air was cool, the sky slowly changing from darkness into light. They realized that every sunrise carries the same message. Yesterday has ended. Today offers another opportunity to become someone better than you were before. As the first rays of sunlight stretched across the horizon, they made a promise to themselves. They would never again allow fear to speak louder than gratitude. They would never again assume meaningful people already knew how much they mattered. They would never again allow silence to become the ending of a chapter that deserved honesty. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. They remembered dozens of seemingly ordinary moments with you. A conversation that lasted longer than expected. A quiet walk where neither of you felt pressured to fill every silence. A smile exchanged after a difficult day. The way you celebrated small victories as though they mattered just as much as the big ones. Those memories reminded them that love is rarely built through dramatic events. It grows through consistency. It grows through respect. It grows through thousands of ordinary moments shared with extraordinary sincerity. As they reflected more deeply, they realized that what they admired most about you had never been connected to appearance, status, or success. It was your character. Your patience when others became impatient. Your compassion when kindness seemed inconvenient. Your integrity when nobody was watching. Those qualities had quietly become the standard by which they measured every future relationship. They finally understood that authentic character is one of the rarest gifts a person can offer another human being. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. During this season of growth, they also learned to forgive themselves. They stopped punishing themselves endlessly for mistakes they could no longer change. They accepted responsibility without allowing guilt to define their future. They understood that wisdom is born from honest reflection, not endless self-condemnation. Every difficult experience had prepared them to become someone more emotionally available, more compassionate, and more willing to protect meaningful relationships with open communication instead of fearful silence. One afternoon an old friend asked them what love meant after everything they had experienced. They paused before answering because the definition had changed completely. They finally replied, "Love is choosing honesty even when honesty feels uncomfortable. Love is protecting trust before protecting pride. Love is appreciating ordinary moments because one day they become extraordinary memories." As soon as they spoke those words, they realized they were describing everything they had learned from knowing you. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. They also stopped measuring life by missed opportunities alone. Instead, they measured it by growth. They asked themselves different questions now. Am I becoming more patient? Am I becoming more honest? Am I creating emotional safety for the people who trust me? Am I expressing gratitude while there is still time? Those questions became the compass guiding every important decision they made. They understood that genuine transformation is not proven through promises. It is demonstrated through consistent actions repeated day after day. As another season passed, they noticed something remarkable. The sadness that once filled every memory had quietly transformed into appreciation. They could now remember you without becoming overwhelmed by regret. Instead, they felt thankful that life had allowed them to meet someone whose authenticity permanently changed their understanding of what healthy connection could feel like. They realized some people enter our lives not simply to create beautiful memories but to permanently raise the standard for every relationship that follows. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. They also discovered that meaningful people never truly disappear from the stories we tell ourselves. Their influence remains in the choices we make. Their kindness echoes in the compassion we offer others. Their honesty encourages our own honesty. Their resilience inspires us whenever life becomes difficult. Even if circumstances change, the lessons remain alive. That realization brought peace because they understood that genuine connection leaves behind something much greater than memories. It leaves behind growth. There were still evenings when they looked toward the stars and quietly reflected on everything that had happened. Yet those moments no longer carried the weight they once had. They carried hope instead. Hope that every lesson had prepared them for healthier relationships. Hope that they would never again overlook quiet kindness while searching for loud excitement. Hope that they would recognize authenticity the moment it appeared instead of waiting until distance revealed its value. Don't scroll because your heart needs this right now. Think about your own journey for a moment. Every challenge has shaped your perspective. Every disappointment has taught resilience. Every meaningful person has left behind wisdom that continues influencing your life. Growth often happens so gradually that we fail to notice it until one day we realize we respond with greater patience, speak with greater honesty, and love with greater maturity than ever before. That quiet transformation is one of life's greatest victories. As this fictional story reaches its final page, one lasting truth remains. They finally realized they were never meant to lose someone whose authenticity had become one of the greatest teachers in their life. Whether the future held another conversation, a peaceful farewell, or simply lasting gratitude, they understood that genuine love is measured not only by emotion but by respect, trust, compassion, and the willingness to become a better human being because another person's kindness once touched your life. And perhaps that is the real ending of this journey. Not a dramatic reunion, not a perfect fairy tale, but something even more enduring. A heart that has learned to value honesty over pride, gratitude over assumption, courage over fear, and authentic connection over temporary excitement. Because the people who truly change our lives are not remembered for perfect moments. They are remembered because they quietly teach us how to love more wisely, communicate more openly, forgive more generously, and live with a heart that never again takes genuine kindness for granted.